Hello, Royalers. Welcome to another great episode of Royal Black and Elite. I'm Lady Trinette Wilson, your social historian and lecturer. And I just want to put hands up, because we have reached monetization. I started this journey about a year and a half ago on a part time basis to hang out and have fun and talk about what I love, which is the royal side of Black history. I wanted to bring light to elite Blacks who many times people didn't know anything about, who were making moves, big moves in the Black community. Whether it be in math, science, finances, I wanted to bring it to you. And to know that you wanted to hear about it, it just warms and touches my heart. So I want to thank you for monetization. I want to thank you for being a supporter of Black history, and most of all, for supporting me. Not only have you all watched and subscribed and shared, commented, all that good stuff, but you've also supported my book, Royal Black and Elite, available on Amazon. I cannot tell you how many sales I've gotten because you all went out to Amazon and purchased the book. I mean, my heart is really just overwhelmed with gratefulness and thankfulness for you. And continue to contact me. I'll be ready for you in February with a great lecture. And today's lecture is going to be very interesting. This video is going to be a little bit longer because it's going to involve a little bit more commentary. And because it began as a story of a Black man overcoming, reaching great heights in his career, to a white story and only being discovered because someone was sitting in a lecture. When we talk about Black wealth and success in the 19th and 20th century, we can't deny its proximity to whiteness. People like William Ellis, a great business owner, Magdalena Walker, also another great business owner, real estate magnate, America Amanda Dixon, who inherited what would be millions of dollars today. She inherited it from her white father, who was her mother's slave master, and hers too. Joseph de Chevalier, who was also a mixed race, grew up in Europe. He's known as the Black Mozart. I have the video end card there for you. Even W.E. Du Bois, a great civil rights leader. So there's no doubt that Black people success was often tied to their proximity to whiteness if they were up north. There were many Southern Blacks and many Blacks throughout the country, in Philadelphia, so many other parts of the country that were successful as well. But the concentration of the wealth was from those who, again, had a proximity to whiteness. But that was dependent on a few things. Number one, if your father was Jethro, the one who gardened, then you were going to live as a slave with your mother. But if your father was the slave owner, then you were more likely to live in the house or be educated in Europe and live a more comfortable life. So that is where we begin, because that is the same story for the gentleman we're going to meet today. His name is Dr. James McCune Smith, the nation's first Black doctor and pharmacist. He was born enslaved in Manhattan, New York. Yes, Manhattan was a slave city and New York a slave state, but he was enslaved. His mother's name was Lavinia. She later on was emancipated, according to the father, who was the slave owner, and his name was Samuel Smith. At age 14, Smith was freed, and he attended the African Free School. This school was a school that they had a network of schools across the country, really, where African American children would be educated. This began a 30-year love for science, and he was really smart. And so when he graduated from high school, he excitedly applied for college like any high schooler would do. He applied for Columbia, Geneva Medical College, but we have to remember one thing. This was 1820 and it wasn't happening. Slavery hadn't even been abolished yet. So as a result, he had to go overseas to school, and he attended the University of Glasgow in Scotland. England, Scotland, Europe had already abolished slavery, and so they allowed him to be educated there. A benefactor and the African Free School financed his travel and his education. Now, when Dr. Smith arrived, He was connected with a place called the London Agency Anti-Slavery Society. Now, Thomas Morgan, he was a historian from back then. He said that Scotland and London had abolished slavery in the 1700s or 1770s to be exact, and that they opened their doors to all races of people. Unfortunately, New York actually didn't abolish slavery until 1827, so that's why he was over there to begin with. And I think it probably was a good thing too, because unlike today, when it takes 8, 10 years to become a doctor, at the University of Glasgow, things were different. By 1835, he had his bachelor's degree. By 1836, he had his master's degree. And by 1837, he had his medical degree, a certified doctor. 3 years to get your medical degree. So if he got it that quickly, maybe these 8 to 10 years, somebody running game. Because Dr. Smith received many awards. His practice was in internal medicine. And so if he was a bad doctor, we would have known about it. So shout out to University of Glasgow. So he became a doctor, and after he completed his degree, he wanted to move back to America. He did an internship in Paris before he returned, where he began a successful 25-year career at the Colored Orphan Asylum in Manhattan. Can you imagine there was a place called the Colored Orphan Asylum? There had been so many orphans, and we're talking about 1820s. So many orphans during slavery that had been separated from their families, and they all had a place that they all lived. And this is where he was the doctor at. He was known as a caring and compassionate doctor. He was also what they call an apothecary. An apothecary was kind of like the forerunner, really, to pharmacy. Pharmacy was in its infancy in the 18th and 19th century, 20th century. So a lot of the medicines were compounds that they concocted and put together in order to heal people. And that's exactly what he did. And so the children that he was treating there at the Colored Children's Asylum also used the pharmacy to get the medicine that they needed. I've provided some pictures here for what a pharmacy at that time would look like on the inside. Again, they used compounds and herbs, and really people are kind of going back to that today. When we were growing up, mom used to tell us as long as you had peroxide and castor oil, you would always live. So, but another thing that he did during this time was to do a lot of abolitionist work. His best friend, Frederick Douglass, we call the most influential person in his life, worked together in the movement. And Dr. Smith was a part of a lot of African American organizations during his lifetime. One of them included the African American Anti Slavery Society, and he and Frederick Douglass actually founded the Council of Colored People in 1853. One big thing that he worked on was he was a member of the Committee of 13, which fought against the Fugitive Slave Act that was enacted, and they really were very instrumental in networking on the Underground Railroad. So he was very active in the abolitionist movement. But oddly enough, during the same time, he got married. And he married a woman who was mixed race, and her name was Malvinia Barnett. And this was around the early 1840s. Now, when we look at her, this is not her. This is James Wormley's sister. But this is about what women who were mixed race, this is what she might look like. So he married her, and they had 11 children. Not all of them survived to adulthood, however, only 5 of them survived. In 1860, he moved to an all-white community. So that was like, and it was $25,000 that he paid for the land, and he even had a live-in Irish maid. By 1863, however, the racism, the slavery, it was going off in the United States during that time. And they had a labor riot right there next to his pharmacy in his chic neighborhood. And so, because of that, everybody, a lot of rich black people at that time, they left Manhattan. They had to get out of there because they were not safe. So he moved in 1863, and Dr. Smith, along with other family members, they all moved to Brooklyn. The same year, he was also offered an anthology professorship at the nation's first black HBCU, which is Wilberforce College. However, his health had really declined. By only 52, Dr. Smith was known all over the world. He was a prolific writer. He cared for people. He truly built a life that he could be proud of. Here's an example of the people signing in at his doctor's office. So it's just incredible that this man, the first black medical doctor, as well as pharmacist in our country, that he had a life and a practice that we can look back on and have some more great royal black history to talk to our family and friends about. And that's really what this channel is all about. Great black history that kind of pulls people out of the shadows that's been hidden too long. One reason he has been hidden, though, is because after his death, he died at only 52. And it was November the 17th, 1865. He passed away of congestive heart failure. And 19 days later, Congress ratified the 13th Amendment. So he never saw freedom as a black man, as a country, but he was already free. He was buried in Cypress Hill Cemetery in Brooklyn. And here's where the story turns white. I mentioned that in the introduction because even though this man was an abolitionist, he was clearly black, even though he was a mixed race person, his wife didn't want to live a black life after he passed away. So she removed herself from the black experience altogether. All four of her sons married white women. And so after a couple of generations, everybody in his family was white. And it was only discovered who he was when one of his ancestors were sitting in a class and found out his name and did some background and some ancestry background work and found out that she was a relative of his and who he was. So that wow. Now, why did she live white? Well, there was a lot of racism during that time. I'm not justifying what she did or why she did it, but I'm just trying to explain perhaps some of the reasoning that people gave as to why they lived a life that wasn't black. So she, even in the census, all the way up until their deaths, they were classified as white people. After this discovery in 2018, the New York Academy of Medicine inducted him as a fellow. It was 171 years after he had originally applied. And they never, when he was practicing, ever recognized him. So it was good to know. He's finally starting to be known, and we are so excited to bring you his story. So what do you think? I mean, about his blackness being erased completely. That was just something. But his accomplishments still stand. And I want to thank you for joining me today. I really hope that you learned a lot. Leave your comments down below. I want to know what you think. I think it's an interesting conversation to have. I want to thank you all again for liking, sharing, and subscribing. Don't forget to hit that like button. It moves the video up the algorithm. I'm learning some YouTube terms. Anyway, y'all, thank you for watching. There's some end cards there. Check out the life of Joseph D. Chavez. And I want to thank you for watching another great episode of Royal Black and Elite.